I'm Erin Carson. I'm a staff writer for CNET here with you for this episode of the Audiophiliac Daily. So Steve asked me to do a video to talk about a piece that I wrote for, a commentary piece that I wrote for CNET pretty recently about why I refuse to stop buying CDs. So I'm gonna tell you about that. The gist of the piece was that, in this world of streaming services and even, the popularity of vinyl and everything else, I actually still buy CDs. I grew up in a household that had a rather large record collection. My dad in his youth was a radio disc jockey. And so, all his crates of records got lugged around the country with us when we moved. And so I grew up with this idea that, of course you have a record collection. That's something that you do. You just, you amass this giant physical presence in your life of records, of music. So when it came time to buy my first CD, I was in third grade, and it was kind of the early to mid 90s. And so at the time, you couldn't really walk into a Target or almost anywhere else and buy vinyl. Your options were basically cassette or CD. And I was advised that the CD would be sort of like the best, most forward-looking decision rather than, trying to buy a bunch of cassettes. So from then on, through elementary school and middle school and high school and into college, I've always bought CDs. I like the liner notes, and I like kind of the physical presence of the thing, and I like the art and all that. But a few years ago, I ran across some academic research that was really interesting that talked to people about why they amass music collections, kind of regardless of format. And one of the key findings was that a record collection can kind of serve as this cultural autobiography of yourself. And that's something that's definitely true for me. Whenever I'm trying to figure out what I want to listen to, I look back at my CD shelves and I'm kind of forced to think about who I was and who I was with and where I was, and all the kind of memories and the feelings that are attached to a specific album, and how it kind of, factors into this broader timeline that's just my life. And of course, over the years, I've kind of subscribed to the high fidelity philosophy of keeping everything organized in a chronological order of relevance to me. So it's not so much when an album was released, but when it came into my life. And so that ends up being a lot of kind of interesting context to see how I moved from one band or artist to the next, and when, and in my head I can remember maybe why that was. So that idea of kind of forging a connection with a collection of music has been a pretty important thing for me. And music has always been something that I have loved to such a great extent that I am more than happy to commit the physical presence of a big music library, give up the space in my apartment or wherever I am to it, because it's a big part of my life. And and these days, all of this is not to say that I don't also buy vinyl, which I do, and that I don't also subscribe to a streaming service, which I absolutely do. But I still want to keep on that tradition that I have started for myself of adding to my CD shelves. If maybe I discover an album through my streaming service and I listen to it more than a handful of times, I'm probably just going to go and buy the CD. And part of the reason for that is that I also want to make sure that the artists and the bands that I like and that I care about take my money. I want them to have my money. I want them to keep on making the kind of music that I, soundtrack every day to, that I use when I'm happy and when I'm sad and everything in between. So I want to make sure that on top of streaming their stuff and buying the t-shirt and going to the show and whatnot, that I'm also buying the CD. And at this point, man, like, it would be sure weird to stop, right? I'm gonna keep buying CDs. In reality, this probably has a lot less to do with making an argument for the specific format versus just like, this is what I started with, and this is some kind of byproduct of the point in time at which I am from. So that in a nutshell is why they're gonna pry my CDs out of my cold dead hands one day. So that's all I've got for the Audiophiliac Daily. If you want to read the whole commentary piece, you can find it at CNET.com. Thanks for listening.